So let's jump into our final segment, dealing with our carpetbaggers and scallywags. So essentially, for our last segment, we're going to talk about essentially the perception that the South had of Northern interference with the South. Essentially, this view that Northerners were coming down to get into Southern business, and the carpetbaggers were essentially opportunists coming down here to, or coming down here, down to the South to take advantage of the South being vulnerable, and they were either carpetbaggers, meaning that they had gathered up their travel bags and rushed on down here, or they were scallywags, meaning that they were just rife opportunists that had come to just do nefarious, terrible things. So both things were not nice names, but the idea behind it was Northerners poking their nose in where it didn't belong. And this idea that you have this venerated figure of Lincoln giving the Emancipation Proclamation out, and then the aftermath is one that's a lot messier and not a clean existence, is very riddled with problematic imagery. And unfortunately, what we have is a system that becomes extremely fragmented, where you have a society of African Americans that are incredibly segmented and segregated from the society of whites that have a lot more resources and opportunities than the African American society. And so many African Americans start to try to provide for themselves. And when they do that, the white segments of society react with violence. This violence is cruel and without any justification for its unending, unbridled cruelty. And it's important to understand how unabashed this cruelty is.
The Colfax and Kashon massacres. The Kashon massacre of 1874 was the result of an attack by the White League. The White League is a paramilitary organization made up of white Southern Democrats. The attack was on Republican office holders, including the Kashon.
Okay, I want to just briefly talk about this image here. The White League that is portrayed here and the Ku Klux Klan member that's portrayed here. This is an image that you will see portrayed or demonstrated within your assignments, and it has the couple that is below them. In the background, you can see that there is a tree. In the tree, there is a man that is hanging in the tree. That man has been lynched. What we see in the hands of the White League, essentially individuals that are out members of society, upstanding members of white society, Southern white Democrats, and the Ku Klux Klan, who are masked members of white society. Notice armed members of society, a terrorist organization. There is no doubt about it, whether or not they were designated at the time or currently. They are a terrorist organization because their sole purpose is to incite terror. They are hand in hand, holding skull and crossbones over this couple. What are the couple holding? Well, they are holding their dead child. They are grasping a dead child, their murdered child. What is above them worse than slavery? Essentially, the terror that they are creating is this concept that it's worse than slavery. Because in slavery, you knew you were enslaved, you knew the rules of slavery. But this constant state of fear, this panic, this feeling that at any moment you could be caught by the White League or the KKK, that you could be tortured, you could be put on public display as an example to the rest of the Black community as someone who has broken the rules of the Black codes and therefore must be punished for merely existing. This was worse than slavery because it was this perpetual fear and this torment, this terror that you were living under was worse than slavery because you at least knew how to exist in slavery. You could find a way to keep going. But in this, the rules changed and there weren't any ways to find a safe way to exist. There weren't ways to be able to find any hope or any safe places, any safe existence.
The White League assassinated 6 white Republicans and about 20 freedom witnesses. One night in August 1874, the White League turned out 6 white office holders and rounded up They forced the office holders to sign a statement saying that but the White League assassinated the office holders. Three people were killed because they were witnesses. 25 were arrested and massacred for lack of evidence or agreement to trial. Unlike the Ku Klux Klan, the White League was well organized and operated more openly. One of their main intentions was to overturn Republican rule. They targeted local Republican office holders for assassination, disrupted political organizing, and terrorized Boston and criminals. The White League was made up of Confederate veterans. The group arose in the Red River Valley in 1864. The League's stated purpose was, quote, the extermination of the carpetbag movement and the restoration of white supremacy. Quote, last Woodhouse. The fire began slacking in on April 13. Nash, who was elected sheriff, led more than 300 armed white men to the courthouse. Nash ordered those in the courthouse to leave. When that failed, Nash gave the women and children killed outside the courthouse 30 minutes to leave. The shooting of Foner. The firing range showed where several pilots had fatal casualties. Nash managed to maneuver a cannon behind the building. This caused the defenders thinking outside to fail. Later on, Nash's soldiers convinced the Confederate captain to sneak into the courthouse and set it ablaze. This gave the defenders much support to move on. It was no question that had been fought for time. After the flags were raised, the shooting ceased. Nash's group led 500 to further their weapons and go inside the building. Survivors were hanged or torn to death. Many were badly burnt and murdered. 50 guards were taken prisoner and others survived. After the prisoners were torn away and taken to a mountain, they were murdered there. Each of the men was later arrested. He was shot in the head, cooled, and murdered in the face. He served his wartime as key witnesses and implemented the Reconstruction Lecture. Federal troops calculated the death toll at 1.1 million. Their exact number will never be known because many bodies were dumped in the river that year. Many of the men responsible for the deaths hid or fled. Government forces were almost forced to move. But in the end, only 9 men were arrested. They were charged with murder and manslaughter. This was one of the worst occurrences in a line of violence and killings against white men in the Southern states during Reconstruction.
So part of the reason why I included the two key massacres there is that I wanted to underline the violence that was included during this period, because one of the things that's really important to understand is that in this period, the violence that is unleashed is really out of control. And part of this has to do with the perception that the Black component of having the inclusion of Blacks within the system is one in which there is violence, there is sexual misconduct rampant. And one of the reasons why it's important to understand this perception is that this is prevalent in all of the media from this time period. This view that inclusion of Blacks in the school and the court and the legislative system is going to essentially decivilize society. It's going to erode the system, and one of the things that's important to see in particular with this illustration from this period is the concept here that the white woman is testifying here, and of course the black men leering at her. The spanking of the child is that emasculating of the child. It's this idea that it's going to destroy the entire fundamentals of white society, and thus what we see is that largely led by the Democratic Party of this period, and again, not the same Democrats of today, not the same Republicans of today, is that there is a huge political force that is very much violently pushing for the the murder of those that are supporting African American rights and protections. And so, with any political movement, it stops moving when there's no more economic investment. And a lot of people got tired of investing financial support for Reconstruction. It was financially draining. It took time, it took energy that people just did not have. And so, as more and more efforts by the violent South were ramping up, and it just was taking so much resources to fight these violent groups, like the emergence of more and more Klan members and more um, White League members. Many in the North really lost interest in what seemed to be a losing battle. And so the idea of continuing this fight became one that was, for many African Americans, for many Blacks in the South, one that was navigated on your own. And so often what we see of the presentation of Black Americans in society is going to be one that changes drastically. So on the left, we have the presentation of our Union soldier who gallantly fought for the Union. He gave his leg, he stands stoically, he is not begging. He fought for freedom, he fought for independence, to be independent in his own right. He just wants his pension, and yet he is not treated as even a man. And yet, in this other cartoon, we see the dehumanization of Black legislative members, where they are given these grotesque features, these features that are exaggerated, that are animalistic. that are exaggerated to the point that they are playing up on all of the stereotypes and that are clearly made to be a mockery of how they are undermining the entire democratic process, because clearly they're making a scene, they're causing all of these problems for all of the other governmental bodies. And so it really makes it questionable as to how even one artist perceives the African American within American society. So we leave the Reconstruction period with what is essentially seen as the corrupt bargain of 1877, which essentially ends Reconstruction. We see the allowing in of the remainder of the rebellious states, and Rutherford B. Hayes being made the next president of the United States. And if you did the crash course, you know that he's referred to as Rutherford B. Hayes. Essentially, there is a huge push to bring in a Democrat. And essentially, Reconstruction comes to a crashing end. And that is where we will end for this evening. So I will see you all next week. I hope you have a wonderful evening. And please, please, please finish up the module for Reconstruction.